Space, the final frontier. This is the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. Its mission to explore the solar system, to seek out new observations and data, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now the host of the Observer's Notebook, Tim Robertson.
Hello and welcome to episode 192 of the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. I'm Tim Robertson, the host of the Observer's Notebook, and also the coordinator of the training program within the ALPO. Thank you for downloading and listening. The Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers collects and analyzes observations of various solar system bodies and associated phenomena, and publishes detailed reports concerning these bodies in its quarterly publication, the Journal of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers, otherwise known as the Strolling Astronomer. This podcast depends upon donations from you, our listeners, to keep it alive. If you enjoy what you hear on the Observer's Notebook, you can donate to it via Patreon by giving as little as $1 a month. If you feel even more generous, for $5, you receive early access to the podcast before it goes public. For a monthly donation of $10, you receive a copy of the Novice Observer's Handbook. And for $35 a month, you receive producer credits on the podcast. You can help us out by going to www.patreon, that's patreon.com/Observer's Notebook. If you'd like to join the ALPO, membership begins at only $22 a year. For more information, find us at www.alpo-astronomy.org. And you can also find the ALPO on Facebook. Just search for ALPO Astronomy. And yes, the Observer's Notebook also has a Facebook page as well. Just search for Observer's Notebook. And if you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, please subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. And now, 92 of the Observer's Notebook. Enjoy. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody back to this edition of the Observer's Notebook. And today we're talking to David Teske from the ALPO Lunar Section. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Well, thanks for having me.
Sure. Now, before we get into it, why don't you give everybody a little background about yourself?
Ooh, boy. I'm a retired teacher in Mississippi, of all places.
Oh, what grades?
High school. Well,
Okay.
Middle school and high school.
Okay.
All sciences.
Oh, very cool.
You name a science, I taught it. That's part of the reason I'm retired, but that's a completely different story.
I hear my wife's a retired teacher as well.
Best kind to be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should have said that. We need teachers.
Yes, we do. Good teachers.
That's right. Been interested in astronomy all my life. I know that much.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it started back with the Apollo days and just kept on going. Loved looking at the moon through my first telescopes and have just kept on doing it ever since.
Now, do you focus mostly? I know you're in charge of the lunar section, but is that the main thing you look at, though, is the moon?
No, actually, it's the sun. I started in a 8th grade science project. I was had my telescope and drew the sun and the sunspot sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
As for a little 8th grade science project. And hey, I did it the next day and the sunspots moved, and did it the next day and the sunspots moved a little more, and I'm still going.
That's good.
I have 10,100 daily drawings since then.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So and what was it?
I post most of those drawings on to ALPO.
Okay. So what was that first telescope?
4.25-inch Edmund reflector.
Good old Inman Scientific.
Base jumper. Pardon? Good
old Edmund Scientific.
That's right. Built like a tank. It was actually a pretty good telescope, I guess.
Nice. So, now, was there someone that influenced you in astronomy early on?
Yes. I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, and the planetarium there had a director. His name was Glenn Langhorst. He really got me going, steering me in those directions. So I really appreciate him all those years.
Well, that's good. So what's your current observing equipment?
My current observing, I do a lot of hydrogen alpha viewing of the sun, both drawing and trying to image the sun.
Okay.
In hydrogen alpha. Except I'm in central Mississippi, and it's warm now and humid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting older, so it's more challenging in this weather.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. So tell me a little about the history of the lunar section and the different areas that we have for, because you have a number of different coordinators for a lot of different areas. Talk about them, will you, briefly?
Will do. Best that I can see on the ALPO webpage is in 1997 or 98, the newsletter called the Lunar Observer started. William Dembowski in I believe it's Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
started it with a quaint 2-page newsletter. I think he went to 2008, and then Wayne Bailey took that over,
Okay.
and he went until he retired from it in 2019. So I'm the third one doing that. As such, I'm the coordinator of the Lunar Topographic Studies program. And that, of course, incorporates all things lunar, surface wise, and such. And keep the Lunar Observer is our main form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Other parts of ALPO's lunar programs include Dr. Anthony Cook over in Wales. He's in charge of the Lunar Geologic Change Program, or as we call it, the Lunar Transient Phenomenon.
Yeah, it's just recently, I guess
He's been doing that for years.
yeah, the name was changed, I guess, because of the BAA changed theirs or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Other side of the road, you know how that works.
Yep.
So, yep. But it's a really interesting program in that rarely do they see anything nowadays that we would call lunar transient phenomenon, but
Mm-hmm.
they look at old records of that people had 20, 50, 100 years ago, and they try comparing the moon today to what it was like back then when you get the exact same lighting conditions.
Uh-huh.
So we can see what the moon should normally look like. And that's pretty cool. We had a stack of, I think, about 10,000 index cards that Winfrey Cameron wrote all the lunar transient phenomenon that was ever known, I believe the year 500.
Oh my.
And I was sent these cards. She's long passed,
Mm-hmm.
and I scanned all 10,000 of them or thereabouts for Tony. So we have the originals here.
That's crazy.
But
So
that's really interesting. He does all sorts of research there.
yeah, he gave a really interesting talk at the conference.
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
Then Brian Kudnick in Houston, he relates to Dr. Cook's work at the conference. He is in charge of the Lunar Meteor Strike program.
Okay.
So obviously looking for flashes of light on the moon. And with a good telescope and fast camera, it can be done.
Yeah.
Especially around meteor shower time.
That's the thing, yeah.
And then Ralphio Lina in Rome, he's in charge of the lunar domes section, and he does such detailed work about these lunar domes, and he gets great images from people all over the world. But to me, you can barely see a little tiny shadow, and that's a dome that's 20 meters tall and 5 miles wide. And how can you see that?
Yeah, and isn't he working on
great work with that.
Isn't he working on a catalog of lunar domes now?
Oh yes,
that's going to be intense. Yeah.
So in that sense, the ALPO Lunar program's a little different in that it has, I think, 4 branches to it rather than, say, the Jupiter program, which is about Jupiter.
Right. Interesting. So, and you're in charge of the lunar transient phenomenon. No, the topographical studies.
No, don't do that to me.
Correct. Okay. Very good. So talk to me about the Lunar Observer. You mentioned it was 4 pages or 2 pages when it started.
It started out as a quaint 2-page letter, front and back. It's grown. When I started getting into it around the year 2010, it was typically 15, 20 pages long, and it slowly grew. When I took over, I can remember the first one I did in September of 2019. I was all in a panic that it would be up to 30 pages long. and it was, but
Yeah.
but we made it. And since then, we keep getting more and more contributors from basically everywhere, and that adds to the pictures and to the quality of the work.
Yeah. Now the Lunar Observer, it's not a printed document; it's a PDF.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can really go as many pages as you want, as long as you play editor and keep it decent.
Correct, but we do mail it out to one person, so that sometimes gets a bit expensive, but that's the way it is.
That's the way not everybody is technically savvy. And the lunar section is really international, truly.
Yes. And I'm thrilled. This past month, I got a contributor from Vietnam. I've never had anyone from there. So, it's fun to get these various places. And part of the way I do that is on the cloudynights.com website. There's forums where people post their work.
Mm-hmm.
And if people do nice lunar work, I invite them to send their work into ALPO. And some of them do, some of them don't. Some join ALPO. So that's a real good outlet right there.
So what type of observations are you asking to be submitted?
The main ones that I like to focus on are Alberto Annunciado in Argentina. Every other month he has a focus on topic, and that focus on topic includes a crater or a few features, that sort of thing, that relate. So that gives the observer time to go out, take pictures and drawings of that particular target, so we can get all sorts of information on one feature. Our next topic coming up is Eudoxus and Aristoteles. That's coming up, by the end of August.
Okay.
So anyone listening, if you can get images of that, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So you're looking for images and drawings?
Images, drawings, articles,
okay,
written reports, you name it.
Okay. Now, do people subscribe to the observers, lunar observers, or they just go someplace to download it every month?
Pretty much they go to the website and download it. I have a list of about 200 people that I email it to that was given to me by Wayne Bailey when he did it. And I have no idea after I send it out what most people do with it.
Okay.
The new ALPO website is coming online soon.
Yep.
And if you go in the Lunar section, there will be a place to subscribe to the Lunar Observer. And that will make my life much easier at the end of the month if people would do that.
Now, when you email this list of 200 people, do you email them the actual PDF copy or a link to the PDF copy?
Link.
Okay,
a link to it.
Okay, good. I was wondering that because a 200-page document, it still take a while to download if you're emailing it. Okay, that makes sense.
No, don't want to do that.
No, it's not fun for your bandwidth. Very good. So is there any other additional information you'd like to share about sections in the lunar area or observations you're looking for?
If you're listening to the podcast, I really would encourage you get one of the lunar observers, and we have a year's supply of the focus on topics that we're looking for. That would help us more than anything. But of course, we like to hear, the general reports of whatever feature you happen to be observing tonight, sort of thing as well.
Okay, I will put a link for the lunar observers in the show notes so people can just scan down through the text of this and find a link to go download the latest. Yeah, it'll work out for you. So
quick question for you on that.
Yeah.
How will that work? Because as we're doing this podcast, we're in the transition between websites.
Well, I will put up
How will you do that link?
I currently have the alpo-astronomy.org/lunar blog. No, that's not it. I have the gallery Lunar Observer. I can change that URL as soon as it officially changes. Okay. So it's seamless to the person looking at the podcast.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Technology is great. So if you were to talk to somebody just starting out in astronomy, what are like the top 3 or 4 tips you'd give them just starting out?
Stay curious. Keep learning about things. Develop your own interests. When we were young, I think we were told, go get a pair of binoculars.
Yep.
And learn the constellations, then get a pair of binoculars and learn how to use those, and then maybe start with a semi-serious telescope. I'm not really sure. Is that the current recommendation these days?
I don't know. I'm looking at what you would tell somebody new.
Is to go the binocular route?
Yeah.
Pardon?
That's probably I would do, and find a local club.
But one thing that's changed since when you and I were youngsters is the price of things has come down so far, especially for what you get.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that Edmund telescope back in the day was $159, and that was an entire summer's worth of mowing lawns at little old ladies' places.
Oh, yeah.
But nowadays, I mean, you can get a lot of telescope for, in comparison,
that's true,
less money.
Yeah, I bought my Dynoscope RV6 while I was in high school, and I was working at a bicycle shop for the entire summer, and I made $1.85 an hour. And it's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And I think my total check for the entire summer was like $250 for the entire, and that's and I spent it all on that RV6.
Yeah, I noticed at the conference the other day you said the eyepiece you gave away cost more than the whole telescope.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Explore Scientific is really good to us with their eyepieces. They're pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, those are beautiful.
They are. Well, cool. You got anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I'm glad I'm able to do the lunar stuff for ALPO, because I think if you can get observers coming in and doing lunar stuff, which is relatively easy compared to, say, faint fuzzy galaxies, you can, if you are interested in that, you can stay there, but you can at least develop your skills. And if you image the moon, maybe then you can branch out and do planets or deep sky stuff. But the moon is a wonderful starting off spot.
Oh, it's a great
for learning the sky.
Yeah, I mean, I run the training program for the ALPO, and I want people to pick a crater or two to start drawing, because the more you look through your telescope, the better you train your eye. You start to see more and more detail. So it's the moon is a great.
I find something you did this was 10 years ago or something. It was somebody had like 12 drawings of Proclus by Mare Crisium. And I thought that was just cool.
Yeah. Yep. It's a good way to get started and train yourself to be a better observer. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, David, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Okay. Well, Tim, I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. We'll
keep in touch.
All right. We'll chat with you later. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks much.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Observer's Notebook Podcast. Again, I want to thank David Teske for coming on today and talking up the lunar section. Sounds like a fun place to start. We upload a new episode of the Observer's Notebook on the 1st and 15th of every month. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. If you do, please give us a rating and review us. It really helps out the channel. You can also listen to us on Apple Radio, iHeartRadio, Soundcloud, Spreaker, Google Play, Stitcher, Amazon Echo, Spotify, and this podcast is also available on the ALPO YouTube channel. You can help support the podcast by donating to it via Patreon, where you can give up to $35 a month, where you receive 1 year's membership to the ALPO and producer credits on the podcast. With that, I'd like to thank the producers of this podcast, Steve Siedentop and Michael Moyer, for their generous support of the Observer's Notebook. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The link for Patreon, as well as the link for the ALPO, is in the show notes. You can contact me via email at commentman@commentman.net or on Twitter at ObserversNPPod. Until next time, my hope is you always have clear and steady skies. Thanks for listening.